Mike Mayock is one of the scouts, analysts who I respect as much as anybody in the business. He felt that Bishop Sankey was the best running back coming out of college this year. Yep. I saw one mock draft where he had him like in the top 10 in the first round.
Wow.
Now, he backed off of that later as things developed. But as I said, I really respect Mike's opinion. I'm not drafting rookies high. I'm not getting away from the rules of fantasy football. He better be the answer because Sean Green, Jackie Battle's a nice back. He's a nice short yardage back. But you cannot project season-long big numbers out of either one of those guys.
Tell me what you think about, this isn't an inside the five question, but tell me what you think about Jake Locker, because I'm quietly optimistic about Jake Locker based on the games he had played, about the 6 games before he got hurt last year, which were pretty darn effective, and then the really nice preseason that he's having, plus the emergence of Kendall Wright and Justin Hunter, who's gone berserk in training camp and preseason.
Well, this is where you look at coaches and it cuts both ways. I don't trust Bucs offensive players because I don't trust Lovey on the offensive side of the ball. The flip side of that is, I like Jake Locker, and if anybody knows what to do with him, it's Ken Wisenhunt.
Absolutely.
And so that's a really nice marriage, and that is something to keep an eye on. You're looking to draft a backup quarterback, a number 2, or maybe you're going to, I don't know why you would take a third, but if you're going to take a second one, you don't even have to do that, actually. But if you're going to, you can't take Locker as your first quarterback.
Yeah.
But you might, if you're going to use a spot for a second quarterback, take him there.
For a little segment we call the Reach Around. Here's the premise of the Reach Around. This is the average draft position through 12 rounds. We're going to give you 12 rounds. I'm going to identify one player in each round. Hub, you're welcome to, or you can just comment on mine. One player in each round that I would reach a round for. A player in the second round who I would take in the first round. A player in the 10th round I would take in the 9th round. So this is the reach around. The player in the second round I would reach around for is Monty Ball. Monty Ball. The upside that Monty Ball brings is so tremendous. There's a real scenario where he ends up scoring the most touchdowns in the NFL. As a guy that you can get in the second round, he is the player out of this list I would take in the first round.
Well, and I want to make sure I'm reading your charts right. I think I am. I'm looking at your grouping here in blue up on the screens.
That's right.
I hear where you're going with Monty Ball. I got to go DeMarco Murray. As regular listeners of The Score know, you would be hard-pressed to find anybody who dislikes Jerry Jones more than I do. And so, unfortunately, that extends to the football team, because I got nothing against the football team.
That's right.
But I have a sneaking suspicion. I knew that they were going to be mediocre to poor the last couple of years. I think they may be a little, they're going to be awful on defense.
Awful.
But they're going to be a little more explosive. They're doing a nice job with that offensive line. As long as it's not a meaningful game, Tony Romo's going to put up big numbers.
That's
so
right.
I see DeMarco Murray in that grouping.
All right.
And if I have to choose between the two of them, I might go DeMarco Murray instead of Monty Ball.
Let's go to round 3. The player that I'm going to reach a round early for is Julius Thomas, tight end. I am a believer in getting good tight ends. When you've got great tight ends, you have a huge positional differentiation over the guys going to war with Charles Clay. I want a great tight end, so I am going to take Julius Thomas. I love the upside. Second full year with Denver and Peyton Manning. They've talked about really opening up the routes for him. They were limited on what he could do this year as his first year as a starter. I see an expanded role for him, and especially with Eric Decker gone. Decker was such a sure-handed guy that they could throw to in the end zone. I think some of those go now to Julius Thomas.
All right, I like the way you're thinking there. I'm going to go controversial here because this is, you got to remember it's fantasy, and injury-prone players are a problem. But this is why I have finished second in my league like 100 times, but I never win. And the reason is because I make picks like this. I think that Rob Gronkowski is going to score 74 touchdowns this year.
Wow, that'd be a lot.
The guy is an absolute manimal, if he's healthy. And so, choice between those two.
Yeah, and they're
same
very
position.
close. Yes.
I like the way you're thinking. I just think Gronkowski stays healthy. He's going to put up absolutely huge numbers.
We both agree. Getting an elite tight end, obviously, elite tight end, great. It's a great way to go. Round 4. My round 4 player I would take in round 3. And call me a homer, but Cordero Patterson sitting on a gigantic season. Hub, over the last 6 games of last year, he was a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. Scored 6 times in those 6 games. Electrifying kick returner as well, that literally had the permission to return every single kick. And when I look at combining Norv Turner with Cordero Patterson, I see big things on the horizon.
I have no quarrel with that. When Patterson was drafted, he was projected as a first-round talent who was going to take a couple of years to develop.
Yeah.
Now, as he's had a chance to spend a year in the league, he obviously is a huge threat in the return game. One of the things that always ticks me off is I think that if you have a player who you drafted as a position player and he scores a special teams touchdown, you should get points for it.
Yes.
Which you don't, at least in most
Some
of the leagues.
do.
Yeah, in the leagues I've played in, you don't. I have a problem with that. I don't know. I'm not sold on Patterson as a complete receiver, and I'm not saying he won't be.
Yeah.
The guy who's jumping out of this group at me, and I alluded to this before, if C.J. Spiller is healthy, he's going to be a monster. And so, again, I got to stop taking everybody I've said so far as if he's healthy. That's why I never win my league. But Spiller, I think, is another guy in that group who's very capable.
All right.
Can I go first this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, round 5. Who are you taking in round 4 that has an average draft position of round 5, Hub?
Larry Fitzgerald. How this guy, who I think is arguably the second best receiver in football, you can't put anybody ahead of Megatron.
Yeah.
Now, I understand the answer is Carson Palmer. Will he throw it to him? Will he throw it to the defense? Will it be somebody else? But Larry Fitzgerald is just potentially, you're talking about a 100-catch, 1,400-yard, 15-touchdown guy. To get him in the 4th round, I reach for him.
So the Cardinals have acknowledged that Larry's lost a step. So maybe he doesn't separate his own, but he's such a big target. The leaping ability is still there, and he catches everything you throw at him.
Yeah. The guy, he's world class. And in that round, that's what I'd be looking at.
I'm going to take a much riskier route, and I'm going to try Percy Harvin. And talk about injury risk. Percy Harvin's at the top of the list, but freakish athlete when healthy. He was fantastic when Christian Ponder was his quarterback, for Pete's sake. And in an offense that really needs a wide receiver to step up in Seattle, and they paid that first-round pick for him, I feel like he should be sitting on a good year.
I'll tell you what bothers me about that. Your perfect logic. I have no problem with that.
Sure.
And I'm not making light of this in any way. But this is a man with an acknowledged problem with migraines.
Yes.
And my limited understanding, practicing medicine without a license, I practice law without a license, I do all these things, that doesn't go away. It gets better and worse, but it's the kind of thing that tends to be recurring throughout your lifetime. And he lost half a season to those migraines in Minnesota. That almost makes him my first undraftable player of the night.
Right.
He's kind of off my board,
Yeah.
just because that scares me a little bit.
It's certainly high risk, high reward play. All right, round 6. My reach around player in round 6, guy I would take in round 5 is a guy you mentioned earlier, Rashad Jennings, having a dynamite preseason, and he was good with the Raiders. This is a much better offense that's focused on rushing, and I loved what I saw a couple weeks ago, Hub, when he broke through the line of scrimmage and outran in a secondary for a 74-yard touchdown. You don't think of Rashad Jennings as having breakaway speed, but when he outran cornerbacks. I like Rashad Jennings a lot.
If anybody knows what to do with a running back, it's Tom Coughlin.
Isn't that the truth?
You got Ben McAdoo. Without Kevin Gilbride for the first time, it seems like in forever.
Yeah.
I suppose you look at that, but it's still Tom Coughlin's team. So the other guy in that group who intrigues me is Trent Richardson. We also talked about the Colts kind of rebuilding the scheme in the offensive line to make that work. But I'm going to go with you on this one. I like Rashad Jennings, too.
All right. All right. Okay, next up, round 7. Mentioned Joique Bell's name earlier. He's my selection round 7 as a guy I would take 1 round early. I believe he becomes much more of the workhorse back. Reggie Bush goes back to more of his Saints role as a pass-catching back. And, I think we saw that trends happening last year. It's a new offense, new coaches. We don't know for sure, but I I just feel like Joique Bell is sitting on a potentially breakout season where he separates himself from Reggie Bush.
All right. This is going to be really hard for me because I believe that this guy should be in jail right now.
Wow.
And if he's not in jail, he should have been suspended for at least a year. But this is fantasy football, and he's eligible.
Yeah.
Ray Rice was a first or second round pick a year ago.
He was.
Now you're looking at him in the 7th round.
Yep.
I got to take him in the 6th.
Okay.
I don't let him anywhere near my wife or my daughters, but I'm going to take him in the 6th.
Round 8. Perhaps the rookie receiver with the best chance of
I got to ask you a question.
Yes.
I got to ask you a question.
Yes.
I'm assuming this is your draft board.
This is average draft position of, this is not my draft board.
Okay.
This is the average draft position from thousands and thousands of leagues across America.
Okay.
So thank you for giving me the chance to explain this. Average draft position of thousands and thousands of leagues across America that have occurred since August 1st. This is how they're actually falling. This is the actual order of thousands of drafts. So this is the reality of where they're falling right now.
That answers my question. And it's not the guy I would take.
Yeah, that's fine.
But Frank Gore in the 8th round seems kind of silly to me, too. Although we did mention all the other backs are going to be pushing him from behind. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. Frank Gore is a perfectly good selection here. I'm going to go with the rookie receiver with the best chance, I believe, of making an impact this year, and that's Brandon Cooks. Now, while the Saints do spread the ball around to a lot of different receivers, they need a deep threat. And he's got Drew Brees throwing him the ball. Sammy Watkins is trying to make do with E.J. Manuel. Mike Evans with Josh McCown. It's such a good pairing for him that Brandon Cooks is a deep threat that Marcus Colson does not give them. I like him.
Everybody is raving about Cooks so far. I understand and I agree. I'm not going to take Gore. I just was surprised to see him that low. I'm going to go here with a kid that I mentioned a little while ago. I think the biggest beneficiary of Deshaun Jackson showing up in Washington is Jordan Reed. This kid was exciting when they found him in midseason last year. And teams are going to take away Deshaun Jackson. I don't think Pierre Garçon, for the year that he had last year, scares teams all that much. I think before they figure out what Jordan Reed could do, he could have a big first half of the season.
This is going to be another case, so we'll say, if he stays healthy, the concussions. He's already had 3 in a young career. All right, round 9. A lot of guys that I like here, and I'm not pandering. My guy out of this is Jay Cutler, and it's not close. You can see, everybody's got my cheat sheet. He's my number 5 quarterback. I think Jay Cutler throws 35 touchdowns this season, and if you believe that he's got 2 top 10 wide receivers, why wouldn't he be ranked that high? Throw in the best pass-catching back in the NFL in Matt Forte, add in a quality tight end. I think you're looking at a 35-plus touchdown season for Jay Cutler.
You may be right, and I have no smart-ass comments, no argument. He hasn't come close in 8 years in the league, and he's just a guy who's got to do it for me before I buy that. I suspect you may be right. I think he's got a chance to have a really big year. I've spent a fair amount of time around him with him the last couple of weeks, and I think he's changed a little bit. I am impressed by what he's done so far, and I think that he's really comfortable with Trestman. He's got these weapons. He could have a very big year. But we've been predicting this for the last 4 or 5 years. Something always seems to happen.
But don't you think the difference this year is Mark Trestman and second year in that offense? No?
I think he's better suited for it.
Yeah.
The fact that he has been his own worst enemy his first 8 years in the league, even though he appears to be changed to me, he's got to prove he can go 17 weeks without being his own worst enemy.
Yeah.
And until we see it, I hope you're right, because my life is easier when the Chicago Bears are having a good year, and he's going to have to. In that group, let me just go back there for 1 second.
Yeah, you bet.
The guy, and I've never been a big fan of his, but I think he ended up in the perfect spot, and he's going to be the perfect garbage man, is Golden Tate. Golden Tate, I think, is going to put up some really big numbers this year, because with them quadruple teaming Megatron, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him.
And he's a great athlete.
Yeah.
People don't realize how good an athlete Golden Tate is. Very good after the catch. Round number 10. My guy here Carlos Hyde. I think you and I just basically differ a little bit on Frank Gore. I see a guy who's winding down. I think Carlos Hyde at some point starts, not the season. Frank Gore, I think he'll start week 1, but I think at some point it turns into Carlos Hyde's job. I think he's just playing better right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was kidding before. If Jim Harbaugh drafts him, I guess it's got to be okay with me. So, whether he's the guy in this group or not, I think DeAndre Hopkins in Bill O'Brien's offense is liable to have a huge breakout season. I wish I felt better about Ryan Fitzpatrick and whoever's going to be throwing the football to him.
I know.
But I like Hopkins a lot. Stephen Ridley can be a monster if he holds on to the football.
Yep.
He hasn't so far. I love Darren Sproles. He just doesn't get enough quantity to be a consistent fantasy difference maker. So I would agree. I think Hyde's an interesting pick there.
Round 11. I'm going to go as my reach a round player with Devonta Freeman. And Devonta Freeman, Steven Jackson was borderline awful last year, already hurt this year. He's going to miss the whole preseason on the bad hamstring. Devonta Freeman's getting all the reps. And say what you want about Hard Knocks, but every now and again you can glean a little something out of that you might not otherwise get. They were recording when Steven Jackson got hurt, and they've got the mics on the coaches. And the coaches turned to another, and the only name they brought up, Devonta Freeman. There was no talk about Jaquez Rogers or anything else. They said one name, Devonta Freeman. He's looked good so far in preseason. I see him as perhaps even being the week 1 starter over Steven Jackson.
I'll give you this one comes with restrictions.
All right.
I can't imagine that we're not going to know. Well, we'll know by opening day, but if we don't know by the night we draft, I'm trying to remember, I think I'm drafted next Thursday night.
Yep.
What Josh Gordon's penalty is.
Yeah.
I'm going to risk a 10th round pick here.
I like that.
Now,
I like that.
assuming that I know and he's gone for the year or 10
obviously
games,
not, yes.
then I don't have to.
Yes.
But if we don't know, and then if Goodell shocks us and only gives us 4 games,
yeah,
I'll sit on him for 4 games. Assuming that's not the case, I go with Dwayne Bowe here. I know he's a bit of a risky character, but he puts up big-time numbers. He puts up reasonable numbers every year.
Reasonable numbers, yes. I'm a little worried about the finger injury he's got. When Andy Reid says his finger is shot, that worries me just a little bit about him. So he's on my radar a little.
Cut it off. Ronnie Lott did. Worked for him.
If Ronnie Lott can cut off his finger and still get plenty of interceptions. All right, final round of the reach around. Round 12. I'm going to roll the dice here on... I'm going to take Noshawn Moreno out of this group, Hub, because I don't trust Lamar Miller at the stripe. He's proven himself to be lousy there, and he could be a guy that just finds his way, muddies his way to 8 touchdowns this year, and I can get him in round 11.
I agree. I mean, Cecil Shorts is another guy on my all-name team. I love having a Cecil Shorts as a wide receiver. But when you put that group up, Marino jumped right off at me. I would agree in this group that he's the guy.
All right. So what do you think about the reach around? You like it? Ah. All right.